All right. Welcome everybody to the Awaken Beauty podcast. I am Cassandra, your positive mind management, clinical hypnotherapist, and biofeedback practitioner. I'm so excited to have you here today. So I want you to tell me, ever find yourself irritated and stuck as you scroll on Instagram, wondering how they manifest that perfect pixelated life? I know I did for a really long time until to live self-aware with the right focus and great others' success. You know why? Because badass entrepreneurs like our guest today, David Snyder, is who is joining us today, are a mirror and a projection of my own level of consciousness along with my aspirations. That I ended up on Clubhouse, allowing me to come into direct contact with David after appreciating his work for you. That success does leave clues, and why we're here today. Track like-minded frequencies. How you interpret it is up to your energetic neurology. Here, where do you start? What's the secret? Well, David is one of the OGs of self-mastery over the mind, body, and spirit that allows you to take back control of your life. So if you know you need to do something to get to your next level breakthrough, but make sure you stay to the end because there's so much right and rich, deep knowledge we'll share with you. So before we hop in, a little bit about David Snyder is recognized as one of the leading experts on specialized hypnotic influence technology. Hypnotist trainer, master practitioner, and trainer, and tirelessly works to develop training and educational opportunities designed to raise the skill level and professional status of hypnotists all over the world. And acupuncture and the use of hypnotic and martial arts. With that said, David, welcome to Beauty Podcast. Thank you so much. I know you have a very busy schedule. You shared with me that you're on the height of another event next week.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra.
You're here.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandra. Your mic is cutting out quite a bit, so you may want to look into that. But just to say thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy and an honor to share space with some of the amazing people that have been pulled into my life. You and I count you amongst them, and I'm happy to share and discuss whatever interesting and fun topics you may want to explore.
Absolutely. Well, as I changed my mic, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of your history and kind of, your passion for all of the acumen that you have on your list of specialties.
Let's see. Geez, where do I start? Most of the, I like to think of myself as a product of the technologies that I teach, because most of the systems and the approaches and the philosophies that I share with my students really began as a way for me to solve a problem for myself. Growing up, I was the classic bullied kid. I was born with a very, very oversensitive nervous system. There was a lot of social dynamics. I was socially awkward. I mean, I was just the classic, I was the suboptimal pretty much everything growing up. I don't want to belabor that point, but at some point I realized that if things needed to change, it was going to be up to me to do them. And I became very, very driven to find solutions. I became very, very, I had things I was passionate about, obviously things I wanted to know about, like martial arts and metaphysics and how to be cool with women and, all these other things. But at the end of the day, I didn't have anybody to teach me. I couldn't figure out what was the real stuff. What were the materials and the trainings and the tactics and the principles that really moved me forward and allowed me to become the person I wanted to be, rather than the person that everything around me was conspiring to make me. And so I spent years looking for solutions. You know, I studied martial arts to build my self-confidence, my self-esteem, but mostly so I could kick butt and take names and make sure that I was never going to be bullied again. And that was the start for me. I was very fortunate to encounter people who kind of pulled back the curtain on the stuff that was the material and the information that was available to the general public versus what was going on behind the scenes. And they showed me how to reverse engineer and explore things and ask the right kinds of questions. And I started to find little bits and pieces here and there. I'd study a system here and I see one or two solid, what I call radioactive gold nuggets, right? The one or two pieces of information that made a tremendous, tremendous difference in creating results. And over time, I started, you know, after spending thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours researching and discussing and really testing things, I stopped and I looked at this little bag of gold nuggets that I discovered, and I realized something, that they weren't exactly nuggets. They were actually like Legos, and that you could put them together in various combinations to create successes in various forms of life. And so, you know, I run a clinic now. I've ran a clinic since 2005 where I specialize in treating physical illness that has as its roots repressed emotion. But if you'd have told me 30, 40 years ago that I'd be in a room 8 hours a day, you know, 5 days, 7 days a week, helping other people fix their stuff and get over their stuff, I'd have laughed at you. It just simply wasn't on my radar. I was very focused on, you know, being cool, kicking butt, and meeting cool chicks. And as I started finding the answers to those applications, I started realizing there was something much deeper and much more pervasive going on. There was a higher force at work, so to speak, guiding me to study these processes deeper and deeper. And I began to notice how they all began to dovetail and work synergistically with each other. And so, lo and behold, several years later, I discovered that many of the problems that I had growing up, many of my students and my colleagues and my peers had. And I started sharing these solutions I'd come up with them, and they started getting real world results too. And so that's kind of how our systems evolved, and where we're going with them today is we just want to reach more people and give things to people that they can just take out into the world and use. You know, growing up, I used to hear you had to believe in yourself, you had to believe this, you had to believe that. Well, there are certain things that are true that work whether you believe in them or not. And I like to start there. I think belief systems are important, but I also think that there are certain things that can be distilled down to just a simple set of mechanics, that if all the principles are in place, if you just do it, you don't have to believe it, you'll still manufacture a result. And so a lot of the systems that we teach and a lot of the things we've explored and we continue to explore and research are built around one specific thing: getting you the result you came for, whether you believe you can do it or not. And then we teach you how to change your belief systems, and we change you how to, you know, build yourself, you know, reprogram your subconscious mind, read people, understand persuasion and influence tactics, how to use the law of attraction. These are all systems that started out as a way for me to solve a problem. And we discovered that when we started applying this and sharing it with other people, they started having amazing results in their life too. So there are systems, and then there's the things we share with the public, and there's the theory that makes it, that puts it all together. But it really started out as my personal journey to become more empowered, to stop being the bullied kid, to stop being socially awkward, to understand how people think and feel and communicate, so that I could predict what they were going to do, or with the greatest probably know who to the energetics and the metaphysics and the law of attraction. And it just, I started to find all of these parallels and dovetails and crossroads of all these different disciplines, until eventually what I thought were a handful or even two handfuls of separate studies and disciplines actually became one thing. Just like the proverbial elephant, where with the three blind men, where, you know, one man's feeling the trunk and one blind man's feeling the ear and another one's feeling the tail, and they all think they're describing something different, when in reality it's just a different piece of the same animal. And so what's emerged for us, and what we lovingly call Planet David, is a system that allows you to generate the results you want in the vast majority of areas that you want to generate. And so that being said, hopefully your microphone is up and running, and I've given you some background on where my head's at and where I plan on going.
That's so, so wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. I mean, truly, truly, you are self-master. You know, mastery is it's a sensitive word to me because I don't believe we always, I mean, ultimately master everything. But you know how I think everybody has this personal journey, right? I know I've had my personal journey of having to wield everything and put the puzzle pieces together for myself. But it goes to a whole new level when you're able to put the puzzle pieces together and then hand the magic over to another practitioner to transform the ripple effect. And how you've done that is truly self-mastery, because you put in the time and the effort and the discipline, you know, and how many years you've been doing this. You're still on the road. You're still doing webinars each week. And for those that don't know, if you go to David's YouTube channel, he has, how many videos do you have up to this point, David?
That we've released to the public is around 234 last time I looked, and that was like a couple of months ago. But there's about another 234 that we haven't released, and that's not counting all of our archived like mastermind videos, AMAs, things of that nature. So we've got, I would say probably we're right around 250, give or take.
Yeah. And, you know, the amount of effort that goes into that, David, is no small feat. So I just want to thank you because, you know, in a time of information overload and cognitive overload, you know, when I can tap into your videos, it's a different experience. It's freeing. You get actual tactical concepts that a layperson or a practitioner to start pick up right away. So I love that you don't hold so tight to your chest, that you're really truly a transformational coach, practitioner, and thought leader. So there's a friend of ours on Clubhouse that used this analogy one time, and it kind of taps into NLP a little bit and how we can use the VACOG kind of experience, the somatic experience of how we can kind of light up all the neural pathways, light up the body. And she had noted, you know, that the brain processes, as we know in NLP, 400 billion bits of information a second, and that we're only able to be aware of 2,000 of those. So what I wanted to kind of open up with is really kind of this eddy current, like I like to say, that's this eddy current of spinning, and we have to find the access points to allow that eddy current to kind of enter into this sense of flow, right? To clear away so that we can heal. And I love how she had the analogy is that imagine if you went to a buffet and you had 2 billion pieces of food, but you could only fit 126 items on the plate. So you process and go back, right? So this is the kind of negative bias. And you go back to the buffet and say, hey, all of this food just freaking sucks, but you still choose the liver and onions. And then you eat the liver and onions and you wake up the next day and eat from the shitty diet. And that's really kind of how the brain is until we can start to interrupt those patterns of beliefs, habits, and structures in our life. And you have so many ways that you can do this, but I thought it would open up just this beautiful conversation around how you've discovered some of this work through Bet Baum and how you've developed it in your own special way about the somatic search engine. Maybe you could go into that with us.
Okay. Well, to lead into Brent's work, I have to kind of jump back. I started training with Brent, or my introduction to HMR started back in, I think it was maybe 2015, 2016, give or take. It's been a little while, but we have to go back a little bit further to about 2005. 2005, I was in DeLand, Florida, at a hypnotherapy training with the late and great Jerry Kahn. And it was during a break, and there was this very, very attractive young lady from Canada that I really wanted to impress. And she was just standing there hanging out. She goes, I've got the worst headache. And I got this download like right in the middle of this break at the training, right? Now, some of you have heard of the energy spinning technique that I use. Some of you haven't. We can talk about it later. But anyway, and you'll understand why it's relevant in a minute. But I got this download and I said, look, I said, point to where you feel it. And she goes, what? She goes, I said, point to where you feel it. And so she points to where she feels it. And she goes, now close your eyes and look at it with your inner eyes. And she closes her eyes. She goes, now notice there's a color connected to that feeling. What's the color? First impression she goes, red. I said, excellent. Reach in, grab all that red energy, take it out and hold it in your hands in front of you. Make sure you get it all, right? And she goes, and let me know when you got it all. And she reaches in, she grabs all this red energy, like instant trance induction right there. And right, and she's looking at it. I said, notice, did the color change or stay the same? First impression. She goes, it's the same. I said, excellent. Notice it's moving. Notice it's spinning in a certain direction. What direction is it spinning? She goes, it's in this direction. Grab it with both of your hands. Make it the opposite of what it was. Now double the spin, double the speed, double the force, double the magnitude. Keep doubling it over and over and over again until it takes on a life of its own, until it's impossible for it to go back the way it was. When you know you've got it, slam it back into that spot. She slams it in. She breaks out in this massive sweat, and her headache goes completely away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, she's like, oh my God, it's gone. I go, bye. Right. And I run off because hey, she's an attractive woman and
Right,
breaks
right.
over. And right. But what's interesting, and I'll cut to the chase, is that one download that I got from the universe became the Rosetta Stone for an understanding of how, of this, what I call holographic memory theory. And I began to build my systems and really start to spend years unpacking that one simple process that seems to put a dent, if not completely eradicate anything you throw it at. And I spent years building a system out of that. And then in 2015, I started hearing these rumors about a guy named Bill Bankston. And Bill Bankston, because people would come into my trainings, they say, you know what, a lot of what you say sounds a lot like Bill Bankston. And I'm like, well, he must be brilliant then. He sounds like me, right? But it's like I kept hearing Bill Bankston over and over and over again. And I'm like, and I have this rule of 3, right? If I get the same information from 3 different sources in a timely period, that's where I need to go next. Yep. And so I went to this website based out of Chicago, and I looked for Bill Bankston when the next training was. I was getting ready to travel. Turns out he's going to be in San Diego 3 weeks from that day. So it's like, oh. So I go to this training, and I'll cut to the chase once again. Amazing stuff. I still use his stuff today. In fact, it's become one of our most powerful methodologies that I learned from Bill. But in that training, I was introduced to another guy named Brent Baum. And the more I heard
know this part of this story. Wow. Talk about synchronicity.
Bernadette Doran, who I don't know if they're still in business now, because I think COVID might have wiped them out, or they're trying to come back. But Bernadette Doran, who ran Equilibrium Energy and Education out of Chicago, she ran a metaphysical bookstore and she held classes there. But the only people she would allow to teach there were people who were coming from an evidence-based discipline. Awesome. So if you didn't have any kind of studies behind what you were doing, you weren't going to teach there. So there was Reiki, there was Bill Bankston's work, there was pranic healing. She does a lot with biometric devices like aura scanners and things like that, the Korotkov methods and things of that nature. Right. And so I met Bernadette at Bill's seminar here in San Diego, and she starts telling me about Brent Baum's work. And I'm like, that sounds really cool and really similar to some of the things I'm doing with spinning. And so I bought all the books, and I started practicing what I got in the books, and I started using them with clients. And it started working like gangbusters. Like, holy cow, Batman, we're drawing from the same sources. And then I finally ponied up the money, and I went to Chicago, and I started training with Brent. And I realized, much to my chagrin and astonishment, that everything I thought I was doing the way Brent was doing it was completely wrong.
Really?
In other words, I'd interpreted his work one way, but when it was all the same principles. But when he would do it, he had his techniques took a slightly different form than what I interpreted from his book. Still worked. So I started doing Brent's way, and it was awesome. And I learned even more from Brent. But what it really drove home for me was this concept of human beings as holographic information processing systems, much like white light passing through a prism. Yep. And is broken up and refracted. Yep. Through the facets of that prism. Human beings, their levels of consciousness, the layers of their energy body pass information the same way. Mm-hmm. And so I started to get this idea that, okay, human beings are holograms, and it's not a new concept. The Chinese had a version of this. I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. The Chinese had this concept of a holographic human being, but they didn't have the language that we have. They didn't have the terminology. So they used what they had, the language of the environment, nature, and things of that nature, like that. And so it's this idea started to gel inside of me that, okay, Human beings are just processing data, period. And it's processing data from one system to another. And the only challenge is interpretation. And so that kind of fed into the face reading, because you were asking me about face reading. Where when you look at somebody's face, the Chinese have this system of facial diagnosis that's a very big part of Chinese medicine. And they can look at your face and tell you what's going on with your kidneys, your liver, your spleen, your stomach, your large intestine, your small intestine, but it gets even deeper. They can look at emotions, they can look at repressed emotions, they can look at trauma history. It gets really weird, but it's still true. And one of the things that my teacher, Lillian Bridges, who is the world's leading authority on face reading, said that when you find a facial feature like a marking or a wrinkle that's connected to a trauma, and you unpack that wrinkle or you unpack that trauma, that wrinkle disappears, or the facial architecture changes, because, wait for it, the human body is a hologram. So I've got all of this information saying the same thing, and now we're starting to see effects and producing effects and phenomena. So Brent gave me, there are 3 levels to HMR, and each one deals with progressively deeper and higher levels of trauma. And it gets to the point where you can eventually just batch remove 20, 30, 40 memories in one process, as well as entity work and things of that nature. So in terms of, and it really is, revolutionary. I would say it's a derivative of Ericksonian hypnosis and NLP, but there's not a lot of NLP is jargon. And it's really a form of energy psychology. And it allows you to very, very easily find and remove these holographic imprints that are caused by trauma, disease, or the trauma is actually causing the disease.
Right.
And you're able to unpack it down to its attributes and really very, very powerfully remove these things, even if you're not a good hypnotic subject. In fact, the best part about HMR is you can literally start a process, stop the process halfway through, have a conversation, pick up the process where you left off, and just continue to wipe the stuff out. And it really took the work I was doing to a much deeper level and a much more user-friendly level, because now we no longer had to worry about things like depth of trance, who was a good subject, who wasn't. All that really mattered was that the person was willing to follow the instructions.
As well as probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but probably as well as, I find that a lot of hypnotists kind of stay away from deep work.
Yes,
just
absolutely.
on the fear, I think a lot of the time of themselves being able to work somebody to the end of the result if they have really bad abreactions. Now, I've had a lot of abreactions, and abreactions could be extreme laughter. It could be, someone breaking down and crying or hysteria. But what I love about the work and how you blend it, and in some of Brett's work is, after I've studied, is that, most people will not do the deep work because they don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to go back to the trauma. And a lot of the time it's partitioned and particulated into the body that they don't even know how to access or remember the memories, because of that glitch that you talk about from, that T9 to T10 experience, where the consciousness literally goes off the radar, and then it blocks it and stores it in a dormant memory into the field of the body. And you and I have discussed it. I do a lot of super conscious work, and so I remove resistance in the field. So I just thought it would be good to kind of weave in there that we have dormant memories and different energy inputs, the language of the body. And that's how I love how you basically created this on-ramp and off-ramp of these dormant memories in a very, very non-threatening way for someone to go through it, through the somatic body experience. But I just kind of wanted to kind of open that up a little bit more with the holographic memory resolution, because it works a lot with the language of the body. The body doesn't understand words and concepts that we bring up, but it knows colors, it knows the feelings. That's how you unlock those pieces. And that's why when you use that color piece and then found Brett and all these other experiences, you're like, yeah, I'm speaking the language of the body.
Absolutely. And that's really the crux of the dilemma, or the cornerstone of everything. Right. Is that, when we talk about energetics and things of that nature, what we're really talking about is really 2 concepts. And again, I'm going to use unrelated terminology, but we're talking about information and we're talking about a medium. So think of a DVD that's imprinted with a certain message, right? Right. The DVD player doesn't really care what's on the DVD, as long as what's on the DVD is written in a language the player can play.
Right.
Right. And so the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and all the subtler aspects of the nervous system, that's really all it cares about. And so what came from this study was a series of concepts that I call body-centered energy psychotherapy. And there's a certain, and one of the things you kept asking me to talk about was this concept called the somatic search engine. And I'm happy to talk about that, but I'd like to throw in a few other somatic issues in there. Well, and one of the things that we talk about in our system is as a concept we lovingly, tongue-in-cheek, call point-and-click therapy.
Yep.
And what that means is that for every emotion or trauma or belief system that you create or you embody, in other words, you have it contained in your body. First of all, every single one of those is built from the same 5 building blocks. I often tease my students with a kind of pseudo trick question. I say, what are thoughts made out of? And I get energy, and I get feelings, and I get this, that, and the other thing. And I say, well, you're almost right. They're all great answers, but they're wrong. Functionally speaking, your thoughts are built out of 5 primary channels of information: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory distinctions. So you have big channels and sub-distinctions within that channel that form the alphabets and the consonants of all of our experiences.
Which opens up the NLP premises of VACOG. It's
well, NLP actually got it from, I think it was either from Satir. I think it was Virginia Satir that they got that from. But the problem with NLP, and it's not really a problem, it's great for what it gave us a tool for exploring other things. And that's one thing that a lot of people kind of miss when they look at NLP is, they have great techniques for influence and communication and great ways to model. But NLP was really the result of an attitude and a methodology of exploration. Of asking questions, paying attention to things that most people don't pay attention to consciously and unconsciously, that the person who's really excelling at something isn't.
Right.
And so a lot of us have a lot of modern practitioners, and even some of the old schoolers, have kind of lost that. But I think
would say even with that, David, sorry for interrupting, it's kind of like, you can master NLP practices, but it's like just like the premises of cracking open all of these different experientials of how the body stores, experiences, all of these things. It's not a communication technique. It's the gateway to the rest of the things and how you communicate with the body.
Yeah, the genius behind NLP is you don't even have to mention. It almost doesn't even need to be stated. If you truly understand what's behind it. But NLP gave us a tool. It gave us a tool to explore the full spectrum of human experience, cognition and consciousness, subjective and objective experience.
Right.
And one of the things that where NLP kind of stopped short, even though the founders explored these things, it stopped short at acknowledging or recognizing that these visual and auditory and kinesthetic distinctions that we use to create our internal memories and our thoughts and our beliefs, and even the disease processes in our body. That's my belief.
Totally.
That these things have a vibrational correlation. They have a vibrational phenomenality to them that can be manipulated through changing this coding system. And so when we started adding that in and seeing the human being as a hologram, we were able to start to make some really powerful distinctions that allowed us to shorten the time it takes for an intervention. Like, for example, for every single thought, belief, or experience you have, there's going to be a holographic container built of VAKOG. I've shown you that little diagram that I created. That's kind of my conception of it. Yeah. But what happens is when that memory is triggered, it's going to manifest pre-consciously and then consciously from a specific location inside of the body. We call that location a somatic address. And then everything human beings do is in response to a feeling. It's either a feeling they want more of or a feeling they want a whole lot less of. So the moment you find where the feeling emanates from, where all that information is being reconsolidated, reconstructed, and expressed, you now have a node, a crossroads, where all of that information can be accessed simultaneously, no matter where it is lodged in the body. And because you can access it all simultaneously, any change you make at that spot will generalize outward through the entire body and the entire field. And so that's why we call it point and click therapy, because the theory is if you can point to where you feel it, you can change it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, you know, and if I could maybe express it in this way, you know, when you get to the root of something, right, it's somewhat the same in hypnotherapy. When you get to the core, quote unquote, sensitizing event, you know, the, the trickle down effect of that, and then what was stacked on top of that, you can collapse all of that at once. Now there's still fragments there, right, that need healing and processing. But the same thing I would say with the somatic address is that once you can unlock that one piece, and then the whole hologram of the body is then able to shift and come back into alignment, harmony, etc.
Yes. And one of the things that, you know, again, watching Brent work and seeing how he did, they cemented so many things for me that I'd been doing clinically and how I worked theoretically and with some other technique. So it was really, you know, I can't recommend Brent's work enough. He's really, you know, if you do trauma work, or addictions work,
Yeah.
it's worth the investment and the time and energy to go and learn directly from him. Obviously, we have variants that we do. But yeah, so the somatic address is where everything starts. And then we have to understand that there's this thing we call somatic engagement. And this is what was one of the big things that kind of happened for us in our systems, where we discovered that the biggest piece, materially speaking, of the subconscious mind is the body itself. But when most hypnotists or trance workers work with a client, the largest part of their subconscious mind basically looks like this. Right? They're just quite quiescent and vegetative in the chair.
Totally.
But what we found out was, if you can get people to engage their interoceptive neurology, that internal set of feelings and sensations, with the field outside of them. Now, I call it the proprioceptive grid. You may call it the aura. You may call it their field, whatever you want to call it. But if you can get them to actually create multiple sources of connection through the soma, through the body, to that field, now any change you make out here automatically changes the body, and so it becomes very, very cyclical. So one of the things we discovered is that when the neurology creates these holographic containers, sometimes they're just a color, sometimes there's a size, a shape, a weight, a texture. And once you elicit all of that information, you can manipulate it. And once you start manipulating it, you change how the body expresses that container. And so,
okay, let's stop right there, because you always make fun of me and I make fun of myself, because I'm like getting this proprioceptive verbiage down, and I know it, right? So I'm going to kind of break down in simplicity, and correct me if I'm wrong. Proprioceptive is, let's say that somebody is looking at the video, it's like the planes, right? You have the planes, right? Up, down, and then front of the body, back of the body. So what he's talking about, if you can access from the front of the body, the proprioceptive is the things out in front of you that you experience. Interoceptive, and say that word and make sure I'm saying it correctly.
Interoceptive.
Interoceptive is, now is that going to be an internal state, or is that going to be kind of just what's behind?
And interoception begins with int. It's always internal.
Inner. Okay.
Right. And there's going to be two levels of interoception that you're going to deal with. You're going to deal with conscious interoception and pre-conscious interoception.
Got it.
And so there will be feelings and sensations that happen interoceptively that you will never become consciously aware of.
Yep.
Okay. You know, the human body, for example, is 70% water. Right. Yep. Now, have you ever tried to carry a bucket of water across a room?
Yeah, I do when I water my plants, and that baby.
You ever notice that shit? You ever notice that shit? That shit sloshes a little bit.
Slashes.
Right? Why don't we slosh when we walk? Well, the truth is we do. But your interoceptive nervous system filters out all of the jiggling and sloshing of your internal organs because you don't need to know about it. But when you encounter a situation or circumstance that is of importance to on the outside, there's a subtle shift inside. The neurology creates, it starts to process the information. It looks for a context to go with the new sensation. And the moment it finds one, it links them together. And all of a sudden you have an obvious body feeling that we call an emotion. So the best book to research for that whole theory, the theory of constructed emotions, talks about interoception, things of that nature, is actually a book called How Emotions Are Made. And I believe the author's name is Barrett.
Yep.
It's a little technical, it's a little dry, but if you want to understand aspects of this holographic system, it's a great place to go. You don't need to know all that.
So the interoceptive
Mm-hmm.
interoceptive inner being.
Mm-hmm.
You know, could we possibly equate it to how the subconscious mind keeps our heart moving, or our heart beating, our coordination is memorized. It just kind of keeps the body in working memory so that it can just stay moving, where then you may hit that emotion, right? You hit the glitch and the whole body is activated with that emotion. And even though sometimes you don't know why, sometimes you may, that's the glitch that comes in when the interoceptive is just kind of working through your day, because it's a,
Well, the interoceptive works very, very integratively with all the other aspects of your autonomic nervous system. But the ones that they're when we look at proprioception, which is that big word that everybody stumbles over, I just say that it's just a really fancy way of saying time and space.
okay.
Because, you know, if and again, we have some very spiritual, very heart-centered people on this podcast. So this idea of you are more than your body is not a hard leap for any of us, right? But, you know, taking it from more hard science to, well, does it exist or doesn't it? If such a thing as a sixth sense existed,
Which it does.
it would be your proprioceptive nervous system, but it wouldn't be your sixth sense. It would be your sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, and 11th sense, because there are at least 6 channels of information.
Yep.
That are 5 to 6 channels of information, probably more, that we know scientifically that division of your autonomic nervous system monitors, one of which is electromagnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get too close to a monitor and you feel your hair rise and you feel the feelings, or you get under a power line and all of a sudden that's all proprioception. Right? If you reach into your pocket and there's an object in your pocket, the part of you that doesn't, you know, and you don't remember what's in your pocket, the part of you that can recognize just by touch what's in your pocket is your proprioception, right? It also monitors mechanoreception and nociception, which is mechanoreception is how your body is actually mechanically moving, which is very important in some of the change work, and which is kind of, when I close this loop, you'll understand. And then there's nociception, which is pain sensation in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these different channels of information that are being coordinated and presented to us symbolically in a way that we can understand and relate to through what I call the primary encoding system, which is the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. Because that is the system that is primary to everything except the actual experience of something. When we encounter something in the world, in the vibrational universe, we have that experience. It's immediately translated through the aperture of the 5 senses into 5 channels of information: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. Smaller distinctions within that channel are made. Those are recombined to create an internal representation of what just, you know, we get T-boned by a car. Okay, there's the actual T-boning of us by the car, and then there's the memory we have of it, the subjective experience. And it's the subjective experience that does most of the damage over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about what happened to you that's the issue. It's about the way you've recorded and encoded it, and the way you're relating to that recording and that encoding. And that container is broken up into tiny bits, like a cloud server that breaks up data and spreads it all over the body. And when you encounter a situation or circumstance that is relevant to that experience, the call goes out to all those bits of data, and boom, that data is reconsolidated, and it emanates as a feeling from a specific location.
Right.
Now, because of the mechanoreceptive aspect, and because most of the things that we're talking about happen pre-consciously, if you want to create a change that they consciously can't fight, because if you're a hypnotist, you're always dealing with this idea of resistance, right?
Yep.
If you can get the body to act out the change, it won't matter what the conscious mind believes, because it will actually overwrite the conscious resistance to the process. So we call that somatic engagement, because the moment we can visualize what we want, we can and physically interact with the construct. We get the body moving in some way. And when you go back and you look at my YouTube channel or the videos we have on Instagram or whatever, and pretty much there's almost no just passive technique. The client is always doing something. They're reaching out and touching something. They're shrinking it down. They're moving it behind them. They're crumpling it up, throwing it in a fire. They're actively somatically engaged, because what happens is when you actually use the body that way, all of the divisions of the nervous system start to interconnect and communicate synergistically towards a common goal, and you get a much more powerful degree of change faster, because all the systems are speaking the same language. You mentioned earlier, your autonomic nervous system doesn't speak English. It doesn't speak any spoken language. It speaks that visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, primary encoding language. And so the moment we get the client using symbolics, they can't help but change, because the human body does not resist itself.
Yeah. So, and going back to example, you know, pulling out the color, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going back to the dormant memory. You can find
Mm-hmm.
it. You know, you got pain in your knee. You're going to go to the knee. You're going to pull out the color.
Mm-hmm.
You know, engage with how it is out in front of the proprioceptive body. Take control of it, and then start to basically inverse the energy of it, right? So
Yeah.
you're literally deconstructing it within seconds
Yeah.
of a time, so that it's removed from the body. And it's so fun to watch people on all your videos. And I've done some of these practices with you as well. In fact, here's a fun story. I had a client text me last night, and she's a client of mine. We've been processing a lot, and she hasn't really quite gotten into trance yet. She's a little bit nervous about doing that. So I texted her
Mm-hmm.
the spinning exercise.
Oh,
And
cool.
she told me this morning, she says, oh my gosh, that was so helpful. And then further questions on how to unlodge some of the other things. But she goes, so I went and learned about it. And I didn't ask her whose video I said, but I'm pretty sure she went and found your videos on YouTube. But, you know, that's why I love a lot of the work that you do. And what I've always loved about your work is that I'm very much an energetic, I'm not a healer, I'm an energetic practitioner that helps people take back their energy, bring back harmony into the energy. And going back to dis-ease, like you said, you know, the more dormant these memories are. And oh, by the way, listeners, you know, we have to understand that there's no shame in these processes. There's no shame in feeling the pain. There is inquisitive questioning, self-awareness of where did it come from. And a lot of times we forget that we are, you know, basically projecting, and I take the responsibility of what is my 7 generations, 8 generations in the past that we know now is documented. And what you have explained and what you share is that when you make that one movement, right, when you start to shift the energy and you start to see the exchange and how the facial expressions then denote it over time, you also have projected the energy ahead.
Yes.
Right. So it's kind of like the torus field on how, you know, let's just imagine it's going in the wrong direction, and then you put it in the right direction, and it actually exchanges energy on both sides. So it's far more important and huge and incredible than I think people really truly understand when you get to the energetic pinpoint.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because, you know, the Chinese, when it comes to the face reading side, they say that when you clear something that way, you don't just clear it 9 generations forward, you clear it 9 generations back.
Yes.
So one of the fastest, and people ask me, what can I do to help my children? I said, clean up your own shit.
Yep.
The best thing you can do for your kids right now is fix everything that needs fixing in you. Don't try to fix your kids, fix you. Because the moment you fix, if it's something that's lineal and either vibrationally or genetic, there's going to be a ripple effect, right? And so, yeah, I'm 100% behind what you said, but it goes both ways, and it can actually, it's very weird, because people can inherit traits from aunts and uncles who pass on, and all of a sudden they get their talents and their traits. Sometimes it's very interesting, because it's not always, there's a genetic resonance, obviously, because they're related, but it's passed vibrationally.
Exactly.
Through the field, and that's always interesting to see that happen.
Yeah, I think it's far more, you know, I think vibrations work into the epigenetics, right? If everything starts as energy, it's just how it's exchanged in 3D information, right? And it's always exchanged in the field of superconscious information. And so, you know, I just think that self-knowledge and understanding these elements are one of the first pieces, but then actually going in and doing the deeper work can happen so much faster than people believe, which we'll go into about, you know, the self-development industry and how it oftentimes keeps us stuck, whether we're too in the head and intellectual, like I was for so many years, working harder, pushing harder, until I actually came to self-awareness of like, cool, like I'm good. I don't need to fix myself. I just kind of have to unlodge what we just discussed on the shit I was carrying, right? And then the things I picked up, and then I doubled down on just trying to work harder to get rid of it versus the inverse of what we're talking about here. So to kind of thread this along, and then we'll jump into that, I thought it would be really fun for us to talk a little bit about the face mapping. Now, as you know, I've owned a salon for 22 years. And so I've got a lot of women that will get in my chair and they'll go like this. Oh my God, I'm getting so old. And I changed the conversation right away and flip the quantum language. But maybe we could go through, and I kind of had a little bit of list. So I kind of want you to help us. We'll get into it, but I want to go over the 11s. I want to go over the sorrow and sadness. You also talked about the purpose lines descending, the crow lines, and then the where we hold our bitterness in the lips. So maybe you can kind of share a little bit of new perspective on anti-aging.
Okay, so are your subscribers going to be viewing this? So if I put a picture, they'd be okay with that?
Yeah, I was hoping that you would pull that out because it's such a great.
Sure. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I knew we were going to talk about it a little bit, but I wasn't sure when we would talk about it, so I didn't get a chance to pull it up. So give me just a second to find that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and just kind of give a little bit of pre-frame. You know, David has experienced both, so much depth in Chinese medicine, but I know that he's done some advanced work and kind of gone into deeper work with the face mapping, that it's not just, the way I've integrated in the past, and I've done a lot of blog posts on it, on exchange of how your kidneys and how they can really look at the internal body and the organ systems, the meridians and things of that nature, where the chi gets stuck, but this is kind of at a different level.
Sure. Can I, do I have permission to share screen?
You should, but let's go ahead and make sure that you do.
How's that?
Make us host. There we go. Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So you wanted to talk about, let me just make sure, because I want to cover those first, because obviously we don't have time to do every single thing. So you wanted to talk about this area?
Yeah.
This area?
Yes.
And this area?
Yep.
Primarily. Okay. So for those that are most of your subscribers and listeners, are they clinicians, or are they just looking to be more beautiful and healthy?
I would probably say B, but as we know, we have a really awesome group of
okay. And the reason I say this is because I'll use different language depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah, let's talk to laymen.
Okay. So first and foremost, one of the most important areas of the face when we look at facial architecture, first of all, a lot of these things you'll only see on one side. So for example, we look at something like mania. Right? And people think because it's only on this side of the face that it doesn't appear over here.
Right.
Most of these traits are bilateral. They can be on either side of the face. One of the first distinctions that you want to make, though, when you start to really look at and unpack these emotions, is which side of the face are they actually on? You see, the right side of the face represents your public persona. This is the face you show the world.
Cool.
And depending on the application that you're in, like if you're in the workplace, you may want to talk more to a person's public mask than you do to their private mask. But who are they when nobody's looking? Who are they behind closed doors? That can be seen on the left side of the face. And this is your personal side or your private side. I'm going to just put a text box in here, right? And one of the things that we want to look at when we start to measure severity or see where the intentions are, right? So this is your private side, right? Your private mask, who you are when nobody's looking, when the lights are out, the doors are locked, that kind of thing. One of the things we want to look at when we start to evaluate facial architecture or facial markings is length, depth. The longer the marking, the more intense, the deeper it is, the longer they've had it. So if you see someone who's really, really marked deeply on their private side, you know that they've got a lot more stuff going on there than they're showing to the world, or that affects them publicly. So these are just some real quick, for people who want to learn to look at their own faces and other people's faces. You can see who someone really is by looking through your left eye at their left side of their face. So going back to this, the first area we want to talk about, well, actually, normally when I do it, I do clockwise, but since you started with the center of the face, that's where we're going to start. And this area is actually one of the most important areas of the face to unpack. Now, right in the center, right in this area we call the glabella, if you for those of you who are estheticians or have a little bit of medical background.
We call them the 11s.
Okay, perfect. There's 2 or 3 markings that can show up here that will tell you a lot about what's going on. Now, if that area is very fleshy, by the way,
Yeah.
it's usually indicative of someone who's got a lot of repressed guilt or regret. So if there's a lot of flesh in that area, chances are they've got a lot of stuff that they've been holding on to that they're kind of ashamed of or feel guilty about. But one of the things that's very common is this, as you say, the 11s.
Yep.
This 11 marking almost always indicates someone who's has a tendency to be irritable, impatient, and has a lot of annoyance. Or they spend a lot of time in the California sun in traffic, right? Which is basically tantamount to the same thing. And what's interesting is every now and then you'll meet somebody who has not 2 lines, they'll actually have 3.
Oh, interesting.
And what that usually indicates is this person has actually learned to manage their temper. They actually have they've had a significant raise in consciousness that they now have the ability to manage that impatience or that annoyance and that frustration. You don't see that nearly as often as you see the 11, right? Okay, so this is always interesting. Now, another thing that you can look at here, and again, I'm not going to go and this is the final one that we're going to talk about. I could spend a day on this one area of the face. Sometimes you'll see someone who has just one big line or one small line right down the center. The Chinese call this marking suspended needle. If it's bigger, they call it suspended sword. I've seen people with lines in the center of their forehead so big, I call them the suspended bazooka.
Or the freaking unicorn.
And what this usually entails, let me go back to my text box, is estrangement between father and son.
Interesting.
And that estrangement can go either, it can be from the father towards the son, or it can be from the son towards the father. However, there's some other things behaviorally and vibrationally that this marking represents that is really, really important to understand in terms of law of attraction and moving forward in life. When you see someone with this marking, what it almost always relates to father issues or whoever had the father male yang energy in the family. If it's a single parent family, mom and son, then the mom was taking on that masculine role. It can be directed at her. So, but what this almost always means is that somebody with this marking, at some point in their life, the father figure or somebody in authority to them said, "You can't do that. Don't do that." And they got angry. They got super, super angry. Not only did they get super, super angry, they expressed that anger. The ramifications of expressing that anger, they got thrown out of school, they got kicked out of the house, they got put in jail, was so severe and so traumatizing that they made a subconscious decision in that moment to never express that level of power again. Now, on one level, that seems like a good idea, except that this particular area is related to the liver energy, the wood energy of the body. The wood energy of the body is the energy of achievement and conquest. It's the energy that makes us move forward and become more successful in our lives. And it doesn't like to be constrained, and it doesn't like to be told what to do. And so people with very pronounced areas in the face here usually don't do well unless they're in charge, right? Or you give them a job where they're largely they're their own boss and they can work unsupervised. But when you see a marking like this, what this means is that at some point in this person's future, that block that they've put on themselves is going to manifest as an inability to move forward, to move beyond a certain level in life. Because what they've literally done is taken a huge portion of their power, their personal power, their drive, their initiative, their sense of potential and purpose, and cut it and put a block on it right then and there. So this is one of the most important markings to unpack and attack, as I like to say it. right? We got to resolve that anger. We've got to reframe the experience so that it's now empowering them and giving them permission to move forward. Because if they don't, that's going to keep them from becoming everything they could be and getting on their golden path. So that's a really important area when we look at people. Okay. When we look at the eyes and we start to look at this area here, and even though you want to talk about joy, and we talk about joy and sadness, we're not actually talking about the eye, but the eye is a great landmark. So first and foremost, before we jump into sadness, joy starts at the outer canthus right here, and it travels up and usually terminates before or right at the edge of the eyebrow. Okay, if you look at somebody and that joy line is extending beyond the eyebrow, you're dealing with somebody who has tendencies to be bipolar, manic. They're up at 2 a.m. in the morning tweeting. You know, these are people who have a strong megalomaniacal traits to them.
Yeah.
So that's what the Chinese would call pathological joy. We would call it mania or bipolar disorder, hyperactivity, things of that nature. So again, and the Chinese concept of joy is not like this, oh, I just won the lottery type of excitement. The Chinese concept of true healthy joy is more like contentment. It's not nearly as, you know, on the adrenaline scale as what we might think of joy as being. Okay. Now, we talk about the energy of sadness. What we're really talking about is loss, the feeling of loss and how we process it. Loss and sadness all pass through the area on the face that's related to the lungs. So many times when you have a client or you yourself suffer from asthma, allergies, COPD, emphysema, when you start to unpack the issue, they'll start to cough, they'll start to cry, because a lot of the energy of sadness, of loss, goes to the lung, right? So, and it works both ways. If you have people who have undergone extreme amounts of trauma and grief, they may manifest some COPD disorder, right? If somebody comes down with something that affects the lungs, they may become inordinately sad as a byproduct of that physical invasion of pathogens. So when we look at these areas, these are one of the big areas that we want to clean up. And so looking at degrees, the first level of loss that we deal with is what we call sadness. This is usually transient. And usually when we look at these markings, I like to use a kind of a two ways of looking at it. What does their face look like when they're not expressing emotion? If these markings are obvious when they're not expressing emotion, they've got a lot of stored stuff, right? If they're only there when they're expressing a certain emotion, it's more buried. Okay, it's a little bit deeper inside.
Mm-hmm.
If the line extends a little bit further to about just below the cheekbone, like the orbital bone here, you've got someone who's expressing some sorrow. Sorrow is a little bit longer term. It's usually a little bit more deep.
Yeah.
And whereas the sadness here can be very acute, the sorrow here is just a very chronic, almost always deep level background kind of an energy to it. If it goes on, if it's not resolved and it continues to build, it goes through this continuum, so to speak, the line will start to crawl and grow down towards the jawline, and it will still pass through this lung area. And now we're looking at grief. And these are long-term, long-held sadnesses and sorrows that have not been processed, and they're rapidly moving towards becoming very toxic to the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer the line, the more long-term and the more mass has accumulated in that particular area. Now, there's another area that's really important that goes in harmony with this particular area, and this is one we call lost love. Now, I've seen lost loves appear in one of two ways. You have the classic way, as in Lillian's diagram here, where it starts at the inner canthus and it just kind of trickles down like a tear, right? Sometimes the lost love line will start at the inner canthus, it'll come across, and then it'll come down. Right? Now, when we talk about lost loves, the first thing that people think about is a person or a relationship, but it doesn't have to be. It could be an activity or an ability. So the example that I often use with people is, let's say when you're 10, 15 years old, you're early in life, you discover a love of horses. And like all of a sudden you see a horse or you're put on a horse for the first time and your spirit just rushes into your body, your heart expands, it starts to sing. And every time you even think about a horse, you light up like a Christmas tree and you decide this is going to be part of your life forever.
You're
Right?
speaking to my soul. I was a rider as I grew up. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Ringo
exactly
Starr was his name. So
cool.
that's my horse.
Right. And then maybe 6 or 7, 8 years down the line, you meet somebody who, for whatever reason, hates horses, can't ride a horse, can't be near a horse. And because you love this person so much, you make the ultimate sacrifice and give up horses.
Right.
The moment you willingly and voluntarily give up something that is supposed to be a part of your golden path, your reason for being here, you'll mark.
Yeah, that's so
and so part of getting back on your golden path, and we have workshops for this. We don't sell products for it. It's something that can only be done in person or in a group setting. Is helping you to reclaim those lost loves, getting all of those things back into your life in the right integrated order so that you can get on and fulfill your mission and live your best version of yourself. So this could be a person, but it could just as easily be an activity. You know, to use another example, you know, maybe you're riding a horse and you get thrown and you get injured and you're told never ride horses again, and you want to ride horses but you can't. Well, you'll mark like that.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so when you see clients coming in and you see the markings in these areas, you know, I wouldn't use it to prejudge the session, but don't be surprised when a lot of repressed sadness and grief and things of that nature come up.
100%. And I intuitively pick up on facial gestures and lines and imprints on the face. I mean, it's intuitive sense. And so moving on, and we'll just kind of go to the other two around, you know, a lot of these anti-aging lines that women kind of think, let's turn again that into a different perspective, is, you know, the middle line in the middle of the bottom lip.
You mean here?
Yeah. So that is going to be humor. So having a line in the lower, in the middle of the lower lip.
Yeah. That's usually somebody who likes a good joke, can tell a good joke, has a pretty decent, healthy sense of humor.
Love that.
One of the things that you want to be on the lookout for, and then this isn't part of what you asked for, but I'll just put it out there. The lips tell us a lot about about boundaries and how people deal with pleasure.
Okay.
And so one of the things that my teacher Lillian says in her book is that if you see somebody with a flaccid lower lip, upper lip, you know, where the lip has kind of got this kind of a pucker to it, but it's flaccid without them actually having to exaggerate it. What you're seeing there a lot of times is somebody whose boundaries are very permeable. Their boundaries aren't very strong. And since we know predators have a lot of what they do is if they see that lip, these people tend to attract a lot of unwanted sexual attention, and they don't push back.
Yes. Makes so much sense.
So if you see a lack of muscle tone in that upper lip, it's usually an indication of poor boundaries.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
I'm not judging. If you go to a bar, you will find many women sitting at the bar with placid upper lips. I mean, I'm not kidding you.
No, I don't doubt you at all. I don't doubt you at all.
No, I think that's so interesting. Okay, so analysis. These damn things right here, I love them, but can you just kind of give me a little bit of...
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what's going on. Those are actually one of the lines that the Chinese actually want you to have. In Chinese medicine, the line that extends from the border of the alanasi or the side of the nostril and extends downward towards the edge of that lip is known as a fa ling line in Chinese. We call that a purpose line. What this generally indicates is that you are doing the things you're supposed to be doing. The Chinese say if you hit 50 and you don't have lines, you're doing something wrong.
Ah, love it.
So they love to see these nice deep lines. Now, if they're excessively deep, we may have to look at how much you're doing or whatever's going on. But as a rule, when you have these nice, clean lines that extend from the border of the nose down, this is an indication that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're on track. right?
Yeah. So when I look at, like, when I think about just kind of things I notice in my face is I definitely have these soft lines, and I will notice myself I'm very intense. I'm a very intense person, and I'm very overly
Yep.
passionate. And I have had a vision for what I'm supposed to do in my life, my entire life. And I've always followed that thread. Now, the overworking part of that is something I'm figuring out in my midlife years, but that, that annoyance, impatience, I'm going to raise my hand. I definitely have that, and that divine
I
purpose.
sure do.
Yeah. So, I think it also, in not to justify it, like having a very intuitive sensory to myself and a 9 quick start. I'm always living in the future, and I'm 10 days ahead of where somebody's processing. So I have to self-regulate myself and just kind of come back into coherence of really being able, especially when you're doing trance work or any kind of energetic exchange, of being really present. And so something I think many people deal with today is being able to be present, not only with themselves, but somebody else. But
Absolutely. The internet hasn't helped us with that. The internet has actually significantly distorted our time sense. And by the way, when you
100%.
see people with the 11s, as you like to call it, these people usually have a real problem. They understand the concept of divine timing, but
Yeah.
they don't live by it.
Yes.
But they're
Right.
always trying to get something done or make something happen. And that's not how the universe works,
Yep.
in terms of the metaphysical side of things.
Yeah. Another thing that to bring relation to that, and I was listening to at one point, is that, this piece about achievers and like overachievers, chronic overachievers, where,
Mhm.
you say that achievers know, you know, what was it here? I took notes on it so that I could remember. I'm going to teach it. Is there two kind of high achieving women? One, overachievers, and then there's chronically worked overachievers.
Chronically overtrained?
Yeah, overtrained. They have a lot in common, but the achievers in life know they are never done, which is the same as the chronically overworked. But there's always more to learn, and that the achievers know that they have enough to start. The chronic overachievers or chronically worked are overtraining no matter, and they know that there's always more to do, but they never get started because they can never finish anything. And I'm like, okay, well, that's me. So I
Well,
just
here's the
love
thing.
that.
Everybody can fall into one or both categories at various times of their life. And here's the thing: where both categories of people start. We all come in with this desire to self-actualize.
Yes.
We want to be more than we are. We know we have these potentials that we want to tap into, and we know there's tons of things out there to learn. So let's go start learning. And so we start learning, and we start learning, and we start learning. And the more we learn, the less we know. Right? That's like the more we learn, the more we realize there is to learn, and that's okay. There's a critical distinction that the achievers make that the chronically overtrained do not. And that is it's simple, but it's not always easy to get. And that is this, is that however much as much more as there is to learn, they have enough to start doing rather than learning. So they do. They get out, they roll up their sleeves. They say, look, I know there's more to learn. I know I don't know half of it, but I have enough to get started. So I'm gonna. The chronically overtrained, and I say that with love because I've fallen into that category too, because there's usually a fear behind it.
Oh, totally.
But they have a belief that they'll start when they're done. When they've got everything they need, they'll start. Unfortunately, the more they learn, the more they realize they think they need, so they never get done, so they never start. And so they get on this little hamster wheel of constantly learning. They can, you sit them down and you start having a discussion. They can give you these amazing, eloquent, lucid discussions. They can quote you chapter and verse of all the books and all the nomenclature. They can watch somebody on a video and pick up all the parts and all the nuances. But when you ask them to get off their ass and actually do something, they find a reason not to. Right? But it's one more seminar and I'll be ready. Right? That's usually the battle call. One more book and I'll be ready. Right? The achievers say, nope, let's start. I'll learn more as I go. Yep. And so that's the bifurcation. And so you get people who talk a good game, right? But at the end of the day, what are they producing? They're producing more seminar revenue for somebody else.
Yeah. And that just it's really transformed my life in the last year and a half when I hit my burnout, right? And my own my declaration is I really am passionate about helping women lead boldly and burn brightly without burning out. And I believe that through the pause, I don't call it the plandemic, I call it the
Right.
pause.
The pause. Yeah.
You know, we all had to come to our reality of, fuck, do I really want to do this anymore? Do I really love this?
Yep.
You had an opportunity to make a choice and pivot, and we still do.
Yes.
But the way that I was doing things was not sustainable. And there's a couple layers here. One part is declaring the fear underneath of it, right? And those are things that, you know, I've worked through and I'm still working through. But another part is, I don't say I have ADHD, you know, from my hypnotherapy training and my energetic work, a lot of times being in somnambulism, being in a trance triggered from previous trauma,
Right.
can oftentimes store a lot of rumination in the imagination.
Absolutely.
So if we can get out of the imagination and really start to understand that everybody has the same opportunity and you have to take control of your mind and you have to stop, breathe, and shift and change in the direction that you choose that you want to go. And so for me, that is, I am a 9 quick start. So Kathy Kolbe's done the cognitive studies with the Kolbe analysis. So instead of saying I have ADHD, I'm a 9 quick start and all my other things are 3 follow through, 3 implementer. So yes, I can try to keep doing those things and doing everything with 4 different businesses, like you can, you know, you can agree, versus be smart, hire it out, stop beating yourself up that you can't conquer everything. And just, so I've tapped into the I Ching, right? And I've really started to systemize my day through flow, understanding my own unique flow and how I can stay in flow, because it's always flow, right? So to me, that's just really one part responsibility. Number 2 is stored trauma in the body of hearing my mother say, someday our day will come, thinking my day's never going to come. I need safety and security and make a whole lot of money so I'm safe. So it's a process, but getting back into flow, tapping into your unique abilities, and then offshooting the things that you shouldn't be doing. It's a combination.
Yeah. It's a combination of systematically removing what Scott Sonnen loves to call fear reactivity. From the body and enhancing and following your joy. Because when you have that balance, right, when you know what brings you joy, what lights your spirit up, what your mission is, and you're doing things that are in harmony with that mission, the spirit, which is bigger than your body, wants to come in. It wants to embody more fully. And when it embodies more fully, the body gets healthier. The universe conspires to make you live longer, because spirit is inherently a negative entropy generator. Right? The more spirit is in your body, the more healthy you become, the longer you live.
Exactly.
And you know, and you can see this in nature. What kind of house breaks down faster? One that has people in it or one that doesn't?
One that has people in it.
No, actually, it's the opposite.
Really?
Houses that don't have a family living actually break down faster because of the organizational principle.
Energy in it.
The spirit in the house.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I've talked to several builders. I said, you can let a house sit for like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. You go back, all kinds of shit's messed up, dilapidated, deteriorated. Same house, family living in it, not doing anything. House is great.
That's amazing.
Body is the same. The body's the same way. So when people have trauma, right, the body becomes an unhappy place to be. The spirit doesn't want to come in. And that's why if you've ever watched, after you've cleared somebody's traumas, their eyes are bright, there's a glow under their skin. The reason is because the moment you clear out that pain, the spirit floods into the body and they get healthier. You've ever seen someone who's undergone trauma? Before they were happy, now there's like nobody home. The lights are literally out because they're out here somewhere.
Totally.
Right. And so when again, the Chinese understood this with their feng shui and the different aspects of that. But yes, the same principle, the house will break down much more rapidly if nobody's living in it.
I love that. I love that visual. It's so rich. And it's, you know, and even your ability to communicate with the outer world, right? Because, you know, the outer world has certain frequencies. You know, I believe that evil spirits kind of hang out in that frequency, and then the goody people hang over in the good frequencies. And there's a dialogue there that you can start to tap into when you enter into that, which I've experienced, which is a lot of fun. So that's so cool. I just love it so much. So another piece I wanted to kind of bring in there is, you know, the power of neuroplasticity, and we'll kind of end here. But, you know, a lot of things too of the overachievers and overworking and chronic and, you know, a lot of this, you know, manifestation stuff that we think that we have to like be thinking that thought all the time, and we need to be in that state. And that's what's going to cause a neuroplasticity. And, you know, studies show that, you know, if you can do what you're doing, set it in motion, and just leave it there. And the studies show that when you're activating it, 20 minutes of deep theta rest to turn off that focused thinking actually speeds the neuroplasticity. So for those that are obsessing about this whole thing about manifestation, you always have to feel the feelings and be in the vision. You got to let it go, and it'll happen less
You
fast.
have to do that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super important.
There's no other way. It's like, it would be the equivalent of, first of all, it's exhausting to hold that vibration. You're not made to hold a vibration like that constantly, because human beings are designed to cycle through. But the metaphor would be, you know, you call a waiter or waitress over, you place the order, and as soon as they walk away, you grab a hold of them, and they can never deliver the order to the kitchen.
Right.
I wonder why you're not getting your order. Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same idea. You know, interestingly though, just a little fun factoid, that idea of the 20 minutes of theta or sleep after works just as well for athletic performance as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, you know, for those, like, you know, manifest, get into that vision, feel all the feelings, do the work, right? But make sure that you let it go and that you just trust. And then you're working with your RAS, your reticular activating system, and just looking for the evidence, right? So why
if your state's right, your RAS will find the
Mhm.
element in the environment that move you towards it. It's designed to do that. It's designed to look for and pull information into your awareness that is in harmony with what's going with your inner environment. In fact, if you guys get a chance, there was I don't know how old this article was. I have a course I call Get Lucky for Life. It's not what you think, or maybe it is, right? And it was back in I guess it was the early part of the 21st, like 2010, 2015, no, about 2012, something like that. I wanted to know how to create more luck in people's lives. And I came across an article in Psychology Today that said there were 5 psychological characteristics that all lucky people have in common. And it goes right to the reticular activating system. The very first one was they self-identify as being lucky, right? And what they did was, the studies were actually done in England. It was really kind of interesting what they did. They broke people up into 3 groups. They had a group that was a control. They had people who considered themselves lucky, people who considered themselves unlucky. They rented a restaurant on a weekend, hired actors to play the patrons. They put a 20-pound note on the floor, and they would send these groups in independently of each other, and they would count how long it took and how many people found the 20-pound note.
What do you mean by 20-pound note? Like a $20 bill?
Like a $20 bill. Right?
Okay.
I say pounds because it was in England.
Got it.
But so, and they would count it. And as you can probably intuit, the average people found it about 50% of the time, give or take. The lucky people, 100% of the people found it, pretty much. And as far as we can tell, the unlucky people are still looking for the restaurant.
Yeah, they can't even find the fucking front door.
But what you're seeing there is a perfect example of that reticular activating system. Whatever you've got going on in your body, the body feelings that you have change your perceptual filters, which is your reticular activating system. And it's going to scan the environment for things that are in harmony with that. So if you have an identity, a self-created identity as a lucky person, your neurologist can, okay, my inside I'm lucky, so I'm going to find things in life that my external environment to match what's going on, right? Same $20 bill, same restaurant. Why didn't these unlucky people see it? Because their worldview couldn't hold that. And so that reticular activating system, we call it the emotional refractory period, because I kind of got my approach to it from Ekman.
Yeah.
But it's the same mechanism.
Yep. I remember Eckner. Man, he's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And then the last thing I wanted to go over is, because so many people, you know, I call a lot of positivity porn, the visualization boards. I'm like, just stop ruining all of these Vogue magazines, right? Like, just stop the madness. You know, and we've heard this example now a lot, like, you know, if you really were activating the RAS and you were back to this example, I'm not going to remind myself like I'm I'm overweight by putting sticky notes everywhere saying
Right.
my body is really skinny. And I go through a thought ladder with a lot of my clients. It's like, let's start with neutrality. I have a normal stomach. My stomach looks like a lot of other women's stomach. Cool.
Right.
I can sit with this for a few days.
Sure.
And then we'll start to shift the energy in that. But I wanted to go back to just the tool, and I wanted to understand the framework a little bit more about what was the image cycling energy healing with Bill Bankston's work.
Image cycling was a technique that Bill created to do one specific thing, to distract the healer so they wouldn't mess up the healing. That if you ask Bill what image cycling was designed for, why he designed it, that's what he'll tell you. The side effect of it was, though, that whatever you were cycling tended to manifest. So it was very bizarre, because in Bill's view of healing, and Bill probably has the most documentation on energy healing, and he has an astronomical cure rate of curing rats bred to die from cancer, deliberately injected with a cancer that is 100% lethal. He teaches people who don't believe in the method to do the healing, and the rats get cured. Double-blind animal-controlled trials. And what's funny is, if you take a rat that was cured through this method and you re-inject them with cancer, the cancer doesn't take.
Wow.
You can go to bankstonresearch.com. All of his studies, all the research is there. But if you ask him about the image cycling process, he would say he designed it specifically to distract the person's conscious mind so it wouldn't mess up the healing, because the healing and the image cycling are two parallel but separate processes. The side effect of which is, for whatever reason, when you cycle these things this way, the way he teaches you to do it, and actually there's a lot of ways you can do it. And in fact, Bill's entire manual for how to do image cycling will fit on a business card.
Could you walk us through it? Because I just have in here to look at, your, imaginal act, and then to repeat it faster and faster.
Okay. Well, if you think about it, well, here, I'll share my screen. Maybe I might have, hold on a second. Let me stop sharing this. I might have a template that I taught at a mastermind the other day that might help people with this. I know I had it. What did I do with it? Well, I'll just do it again. That's all right. I'll just start another page. So the way image cycling actually works is you have what I call manifestation 1, manifestation 2, and manifestation 3. Now, I do it this way because this can be a very confusing process. So this is how I want you to think about it. Let's say I want to build a 6-figure business or a 7-figure business, wherever you're at. Okay, so my first manifestation is I want to build a 6-figure business. Right? So maybe I create a mental movie using the primary encoding system of having that 6-figure business. Maybe I'm depositing a 6-figure check in the bank. Maybe I'm buying something cool with that 6-figure business or something like that. Let's go 7 figures because I don't like to think small, right? But I've got my 7, and I'm just imagining what my life would be like with that 7-figure business, right? Then I'm going to ask myself a question. If I got this, if I had the 7-figure business, right, what would I do then? Well, maybe I'd buy a house. So manifestation 2 is a result of manifestation 1.
Are you showing your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I thought I was. 1 second.
That's okay.
Okay. So my first manifestation is what? The 7-figure business. So I make a mental movie of me in my 7-figure business, writing a check, getting paid 7 figures, signing a contract on whatever it is, right? And then I ask myself the magic question. Well, if I had that, what would I do next? As a result.
Right.
And that might be buy a brand new house, right? And so I'll make a mental movie of me moving into my brand new house using VACOT, right? And I want to make it awesome. The most important piece about this process is it's got to bring you tremendous selfish pleasure. If you're not as hedonistic as humanly possible, you're selling yourself short on the power of this process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So manifestation 3 is you can probably intuit, okay, I got my 7-figure business. And once I've had that 7-figure business, I'm going to take some of that money. I'm going to buy me a brand new house. And then what am I going to do? Well, I might buy more houses. I might buy a vacation home in the Bermuda or Bahamas or something, right? I might do a world, trip around the world. Doesn't matter what it is, but each one is a direct extension of the first one, of the previous one. You follow me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, so I have these 3 movies that I've created. I'm going to collapse them down to either a keyword or phrase or symbol. That is a gestalt.
Yep.
Of this 3-level sequence.
Yep.
That is all pleasure-based, that is carrying past the original thing that I want. That becomes the first entry on the image cycling list. So you literally do this process for everything on your list. And when Bill teaches, he has people doing, 2, 3, all the way down to 20. And I think the record as of the last time I talked to Bill, I think one person had like 72 distinct items on their list.
So really, this is just getting very, very narrowed down and very, very particulate on, okay, well, what will that do for you? Okay, well, then what, when you manifest that, then what?
Yeah,
well,
the magic is in the creation and the meditation on the list before the cycling actually begins. So once you've got this and you've compressed it down to a key word and you have all of your entries, right, we'll just copy this. Right, so I've got my list of 20 things, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that list and I'm going to meditate on each entry. And I'm just going to live those movies over and over again for 5 full minutes. This is the part most people don't do.
It takes time.
Mm-hmm. So, because it's just creating the list. If you use this 3-level process and then sandwiching it down to a phrase or the symbol, so you're priming the subconscious, not only with the first thing you want, but you're moving that energy beyond it. Which, if you've ever done any martial arts, if you're ever taught how to break a board in martial arts, they teach you not to focus on the surface of the board, but to focus through the board. And when your energy flows through something, it breaks through barriers. So you can take that metaphor. So I take each of these entries on my image cycling list. I spend 3 to 5 minutes just having fun and imagining what it'd be like to have all that good stuff and linking it to the symbol. When I'm done with my list, I can put the list in a drawer and not worry about it anymore. Now I just rapidly cycle through each of the keywords or symbols at ever increasing rates of speed.
Do you just look at them or do you have to memorize them?
It helps to memorize them.
Okay.
Okay. But if you need your list, you need your list. But but you keep cycling faster and faster and faster. And here's the key heuristic I follow: for as long as it feels good.
Yeah. And then once it does it, let it done.
You're done.
And then make a new list. Yep.
Right. And what you do is you do what we call list maintenance. So let's say you're cycling and you're cycling, you're cycling.
and the first thing you and again, they won't always manifest linearly, like in the order you've created them, because the universe isn't linear that way. But let's say, just for an example, I've got 20 things, and the second thing on my list manifests. The first thing that has to happen is the minute you manifest something on your list, you got to take it off.
Yep.
Because if you keep cycling on something you've already got, in order for you to have something, you need to lose it.
Yep, exactly.
So you'll actually delete it from your list. Now, one of the things that kind of holds people back sometimes when they're doing this is that they're afraid if they actually succeed in manifesting something, they're going to be, and they don't like it, they're stuck with it. No, you're never stuck. If you manifested this, you can manifest something else.
Change it.
Right. So one of the cool ways that I teach my students to do this is I have them create a 5 to 10 micro list. I have them hold a bottle of water in their, I have to take 2 bottles of water. I have them take 1 bottle, put it under their chair. I have them hold the other bottle in their left hand. And all they're going to do is hold it. And then I guide them through a cycling session, usually 5 to 10 minutes. And then at the end of that session, I have them take the water from underneath their chair, take a swig, have them sip the water in their hand. And I have them say, temperature doesn't count. Tell me about the water you were holding. And the water's always changed. The water's always different, right? We call this Eucharistic healing or Eucharistic charging. But it demonstrates in 5 minutes of cycling that you can change the molecular tension in water. And that just, and then all of a sudden, if they've done the process, shit just starts manifesting. It won't always be gentle. I got to warn you. You know, if you want to manifest that 7-figure business, you may have to lose that cushy 5-figure business that you've been collecting a steady paycheck from. Yeah. The universe, the system is not always gentle.
Yep.
But it is the most powerful, most reliable engine of transformation I have come across. And I've come across a couple that are super powerful. This is right up there in the top 3. Wow. Right. So, and you can, and the doctorate in front of my name was a result of image cycling. Okay. Because when I tried to get my doctorate, they told me I wasn't qualified. After auditing my transcripts like 27 times, they told me, no, you don't have enough credits yet. You got to go back and get more credits. And I hit brick wall after brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. And after a while, your neurology evolves to, you interface so fluidly with the non-local universe that my mantra is something will happen. And the cycling just happens, right? But after a year of trying to get those credits, hitting one roadblock after another, I said, you know what? I put it aside. I said, something will happen. And I just put it on my cycling list. A year to the day that the school told me I didn't have enough credits, I got a phone call from the recruiting office at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. It says, David, we were just doing routine review of transcripts. Yeah. And we discovered that we made a mistake on your transcripts. You aren't actually 9 credits short. You're 9 credits over. Would you like to join our program?
Unbelievable, David. Oh, I just love it. And you know, I celebrate your life so much. It's just such a joy to be with you. It's such a joy to see you transform so many lives. And you've really kind of brought this love of learning again back into, you know, the hypnosis. And sometimes that world can get a little, so it's just, I love the energy. The energy work is what lights me up because it works. There's nuances to it, but it's personalized to you. And so thank you so much for your time today. There's something I always ask at the end of a podcast, and I know you're a very busy person, but you know, outside of all of the stuff, right? This is how you live your life. And I understand that it's part of you, but outside of all of that, related, not related, what is something that on the Awaken Beauty podcast that you've deeply awakened to as of late that you could share with us today?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. Is that there is true magic in every man and woman and child on this planet. And if people could see themselves the way I see them, you'd really realize that. The corollary to that
is, you know, because of the life choices I've made, like I said, I never planned on being a healer or a therapist. It was just not on my radar. It's just something you evolve to. It's not something you choose. It's something that chooses you.
Exactly.
Each and every one of you has a divine path in this life. Actually, and there's many roads to manifest that path. Follow your joy. Because, and regardless of what society or culture says you should or shouldn't have, or what you should or shouldn't like, follow the light in your heart. Follow what lights you up on the inside. Because after having looked into the hearts and minds of literally thousands of people in my sessions, every time you peel back those layers, you see the same thing. A scared little child,
Yep.
desperate to be loved and accepted, terrified of being alone.
Yep.
And when you give them that, and there's only one entity in the universe that can do that, and that is the person themselves, your own spirit. The way you bring more of your spirit into your body is through following your joys, regardless of what the people outside of you say. When more of that spirit comes into your body, you become the best version of yourself. You bring your light into the world, and the world changes, starting with yours. And so when you give the person that understanding that they are loved, they're always accepted, they're always good enough, they're never alone, they can accomplish miracles. Miracles of healing, miracles of extrapersonal transformation, interpersonal transformation, and the world becomes a brighter place. And so, you know, there's no obstacle. There's only lessons to be learned. Mm-hmm. Things that are put in your path to help you become better at who you're destined to be. So just follow your joy, and remember, everything is there to teach you something.
So true. So true. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate, man, the time, you know, this being with you and learning, and I don't think people realize, but they're actually shedding things as they listen to us here today, which is so fun to be a part of that process. And so I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for your time. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You know, I will be sharing all the goodies, your YouTube channel, your website in the show notes.
Perfect.
And is there anything else that you would want to leave with us today?
It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to serve and to be amongst such amazing and spiritual beings. And I look forward to working with all of you very, very soon. Good night and God bless.
Sure, I'll see you on Clubhouse soon. So, all righty, awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining the Awaken Beauty podcast. And as I always say, until next time, stay sane, get sleep, and bring your sexy back. Thanks so much.